Welcome, everyone. This is Glenda Dawson, and you're watching Glenda's Dragon's Den. I want to take this opportunity to say how grateful I am for all your support, for everyone that shares these shows, for everyone that watches, whether live or later on, and for all of your feedback. I appreciate getting the feedback on our guests, on how they made an impact on you, and to hear that you're now following them or um, getting classes from them or getting their books, whatever it is. I am so looking forward to continuing to read all about it, and just kind of like a reminder, please, if you have not, subscribe, share, like, because the more that people get to know different perspective, the better it is. We all are stuck in our own little world, especially these days. And the more we hear, the more knowledge we receive, the better it is for the world in general, because it raises the vibrations. One of the ways it raises the vibrations. So tonight we have a phenomenal guest who I have had the pleasure of already speaking with her previously in another podcast. And I can't tell you how great it is because I'm going to show you how great she is. So, welcome, Kara. How are you?
Thank you, Glenda. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be with you again.
Same, same. I'm thrilled to have you here. And, my audience always loves to hear how the guests got to where they are. Their upbringing, what decisions they made, what pivotal points they experienced in their life to get them to this point. And of course, your books, what you do. So please, let's share.
Absolutely. Well, I started pretty mainstream, pretty regular. I grew up in the Midwest. I'm back in the Midwest now in Indiana, so not too far away from where you are.
Mhm.
And I, went to public school, went to a big university, worked in the business world and in major corporations, big blue chip companies. And I was fine with that. I had a little, I wasn't very spiritual. I grew up with a little bit of a little bit. We weren't like going to church it was like a Christian background, the Episcopal church. Um, we didn't go to church all the time. We weren't like active in the community from that perspective, but I had found my way into some, services over time. So I wasn't a stranger to religion, but frankly, I found it kind of confusing. I was interested in spirit. I
Mhm.
was interested in like angel stories or supernatural stories and those kind of miraculous types of stories. I would really draw me in. But when I would go to church, it was so confusing. It was hard to understand. It took place in an unfamiliar setting with unfamiliar names. And, there was a lot of contradiction that didn't make sense about, you know, God is this loving God, and yet, you could easily go to hell for some mistakes that you make. And some of those reasons that you might go to hell were even like confusing as to like why would I be damned forever? Not to mention the fact that like, wait, this being created me, like, and loves me, and yet I'm going to be, damned to hell for, whatever misdeeds I might do.
Right.
So those are just some examples, but a lot of confusion just around what the stories were supposed to mean, who the people were, and so I didn't have a lot of religion in my 20s and 30s, really. Um, I ended up having a major spiritual awakening that, I mean, when I say it like that, it sounds like, boom, I woke up one day and I was like, whoa, the world's so different than, how it was yesterday. And it wasn't like that for me. It was a slower process, but it was initiated by some big things that happened very quickly in my life. So I, in a very short time, experienced a number of tragedies in my personal life, in my family's life. My sister-in-law took her life. That was the first big domino that fell. She was not only my sister-in-law, but was a really close friend, an important person in my life. And so that was shocking. And then our dog died like 3 weeks after that. Then my stepdad was underwent surgery on his brain stem, which, there's a lot of questions about his deteriorating health and what things might be like after that surgery and so forth. Luckily, he's doing well. Um, my mother-in-law was hit by a motorbike as she crossed the street. So she was in hospital for a while, recuperating from that. And then my stepmom got very, very sick and ended up having a heart transplant. Became so sick that she got to the top of the heart transplant list. So heart transplant in and of itself is a huge deal, but then, everything ahead of that too is, there's a lot of questions and a lot of trauma, thinking that things might be coming to an end there. So all of that also was happening while my husband and children and I were living abroad. So we were living in Italy, and my family's in America. My husband's family is in England. So we couldn't really very easily even go through all of those traumas with the people that we wanted to support. And, that when things, you want to circle the wagons, and
Mm-hmm.
we weren't in a position to be able to do that. So, um, really, really hard, confusing time. And through that, I ended up discovering meditation. I had been drawn to meditation for a lot. Like I said, I've always kind of been spiritually curious. And so when I would hear about people who had different abilities or different, they were tapping into some sort of supernatural abilities, a lot of times meditation would come up in those types of things. And I would think, man, this meditation thing is powerful. And I would try to do it and I couldn't get anywhere with it. I never really was able to feel that I was actually doing it properly or getting anything out of it. So I tried meditation a few times, didn't keep going with it. But when I was going through all this trauma, I was like, I think it's time that I try meditation. So I found a teacher, and because I felt that I really needed to kind of learn it, because all
Mm-hmm.
the times before then I just kind of tried it. I thought this was this really natural thing that everybody was supposed to be able to do. And hence, I should just be able to do it without being taught how to do it. And getting a teacher was really fundamental to me being able to actually get somewhere with meditation. But because I was going through such a difficult time, my meditation desire at that time was really just to be able to cope. It was to be able to feel better. And so I wasn't really looking for spiritual nourishment at that time. I think in the back of my head, I'm sure I was, but that wasn't
Right.
like the critical part of it at that
Mm-hmm.
time. So even though I was being taught by a group that was encouraging me to pray before I would meditate, I wasn't so sure about that. They had their own lineage that they would pray to, and I wasn't like super comfortable with that to start with, because again, like I didn't know this lineage. I didn't want to get caught up in some sort of cult or something. And so it started for me in a very secular way in terms of just trying to feel better. And what ended up happening is, through my meditation practice, I started to have some experiences where I was tapping into some unexplainable things. I was expanding my own perception of, whether we think of it as inner sight, inner knowingness, or however we think about that. I was having my own experiences that I couldn't explain.
Right.
And so that was when I started kind of opening more to the spiritual side. And then it's kind of funny for me to look back on it as me, kind of being closed off to that to start with, to the extent that I had a healing session. I remember this, it's so funny to me now. When I was living in Italy, I went on a retreat with
Mhm.
the group that where I was learning meditation through. And the teacher on my retreat gave me a healing session. And when she got to my heart, she said, "You're not praying. When you meditate, you don't pray. Your heart is closed. You need to open your heart." And what's so funny about this is this woman had no reason to think that I didn't pray, because I had gone to the sort of the European headquarters of this group.
Mhm.
And I was like the star student in our little class. There were maybe like a dozen people in this class, and I had been taking online courses already. I already knew like some of the people there. I was definitely the one who already had background. There were other people who came just because they were looking for something in that area, so they didn't know this group. They didn't know like the yogic master who was the founder. Um, so I was like the star pupil. And she had even pulled me aside and asked me if I wanted to experience a healing session. And according to her, which she seemed like a very, very humble, very honest person, she was like, "I never do this, but I'm getting the guidance to at least offer this to you to see if you'd be interested." And again, like she even told, like, was indicating, like, I kind of stood out to her in our interactions. So from that perspective, she would think, I mean, my logical mind tells me, well, she would think I'm this star pupil and I do everything that I'm told, and they make a big deal about praying before you
Mhm.
meditate. So the logical mind would say, well, she follows the rules, she knows the game, she knows the
Right.
method, so she prays. But that she went against logic and like made this big deal about how I'm not praying before I meditate, and I really need to, and that will open my heart, and it's really important that my heart is open. And that was like my own little secret. Like nobody knew that
Right.
I didn't pray before I meditated. So that is how like mental I was about all of this stuff in the beginning. And now the spirit side is so important to me. Like that is what I'm deeply, deeply connected to. That's a big, big, I mean, that's really the reason that I continue to meditate. That's the reason that I work with people. It's such an important part of my personal experience and what I care about. And so it is really funny for me to look back and be like, man, I was really resistant to that in the beginning. So it was through that's kind of a little bit about my origin story, but over time, my experiences started, things started to open up, my experiences started to connect me deeper. And I became certified to teach meditation. So that's been kind of the thread through my work in
Mhm.
terms of working with people. I've always kind of had this meditation piece where I love the practical side of it, how much it can shift us into
Mhm.
feeling better. Um, I also I feel that there is a conveyance, there's an energy conveyance that is happening, a transmission that's happening
Mm.
through those meditations under the surface that are subtle, that I don't really often call out, but I can feel happening, and I get, feedback from people about what they experience, which which verifies that. But I'm never kind of like, okay, we're going to do this energy transmission. Like that's not really my style. I like to keep it where we're just meditating. We're just quote unquote meditating.
Right.
And then I became a Reiki master and spent some time learning about the healing arts, and I love the healing arts, and started the podcast Soul Elevation, it's called now. For many years, it was called the Meditation Conversation. It started as we really started with the focus on meditation and the importance of meditation. I had a co-host who was in Sweden, and then over time, I was the only one doing it. She had to kind of reprioritize some things, and so it was only last year that I changed the name to Soul Elevation because it had been so long. I'm like, I think 520 episodes in now, and it was only really like the first, I want to say like maybe 40 episodes that was really focused on meditation, and then I started interviewing other people, and it really wasn't about meditation anymore. So the rebranding only just happened a year ago, but and then I wrote my book. My book came out earlier this year, and it's called Your Authentic Awakening, A Guide to Everyday Spiritual Living. This is focusing, it tells a little bit about my story, but every chapter talks about different ways that we can deepen our connection or open our connection to the spiritual reality of existence. And so every chapter ends with some practical ways that we can, some tools that we can implement and utilize to deepen that connection. And I also go into many of the metaphysical or mystical experiences that I've had, because in the last few years, I've started having some really weird experiences. So, that have really kind of blown my mind, and I've loved them. But they're like kind of so expansive and, really beyond this realm, with a lot of insights that come in. So I think those are, I find it so activating to hear about people's experiences outside of or beyond this material world. And so I do think that when we share, it is activating. And then there are insights that come in that a lot of the ways that I see things, they end up being metaphors. Sometimes solutions drop in that are complex and layered. And I'm like, whoa, that is like a masterpiece. I could have drawn this on a whiteboard for about 10 months and not come into the level of understanding about the complexity and the simplicity and about this problem that I've been having and the best solution for it. And then it just comes to me like this, with a lot of visuals and things like that. So part of the book is getting more expansive into that type of, trying to explain what it is that I experience and I see, but then also like, so what? How does it move the needle for me, and what does it mean for other people?
And like you were saying, if we share our own experiences, it helps others not only understand theirs, but it also helps them understand that they're not alone.
Absolutely.
That there are many others that are going through rough spots, or they get their solutions and they're like, what am I doing with this? Like, even though it's right in front of them and technically, or they give it to them, they download it or whatever, and you have it in your mind, you're working, but you have all the pieces, but they haven't quite made it to the right place. And you're like, I got it, but can you like give it to me in a little more, I don't know, brighter, more explained, a bigger explanation to what exactly you want me to do with these pieces.
Right. And that's the multidimensional nature, I think, because there are times, I still get this. I'm going through this right now with some, and I can go into that if you want to, but it's, there are a lot of different pieces and moving parts of these insights that are coming in, and there's still big gaps where I'm like, okay, all signs are pointing toward this, that the communication here is what has happened or is happening, but I'm still missing some like vital, insights that or verifications. I don't know. Do you want me to, maybe it's better if I don't dance around and I just share, but
Sure.
so as you know, my family took a trip to Berlin very recently. And while I was there, I started reading Whitley Strieber's book, Communion. Have you read Communion?
I have not read Communion.
So classic. I'm sure you've heard of it.
Yes, I have.
It's Whitley Strieber was one of the early ET phenomenon, who was sharing his personal experience, had an abduction in the 80s, underwent hypnosis, and his book has been really critical for a lot of people who are experiencers. I've heard about Whitley for a long time. That book has been on my radar, but I hadn't ever purchased it or kind of really felt that it was time to read it.
Right.
Well, I had a guest on my podcast right before I went to Berlin, and she made a really off the cuff comment about Whitley's book. And there was this resonance that came in when she talked about it that I was like, okay, I want to read this book. And she wasn't like going on and on about how important it had been or blah, blah, blah. It was literally like one little mention about something that was at the end of this book that related to her experience. But for some reason, I got the signal like, it's time to read this. So I took the book to Berlin. This was a super short trip. We arrived on Saturday morning and we left on Tuesday. So it was a fast trip, but I made a huge dent in this book regardless, which I think time just stretched out while I was there, because even though it was such a short trip, we did a lot. And when I think about like how much I got from this book in such a short time, I'm like, there aren't enough hours, because I also slept while I was there.
I was going to ask, so how was sleeping?
Yeah. But it was interesting because we went to the Berlin Wall. I'd never been to Berlin before. Went to the remains of the wall, and I was remembering that I watched on the news when the wall came down. I think it was in 89. And so I was I think it was about 11. And I remember I was watching it at my dad's house, which was an important point because my parents were divorced and I didn't spend as much time at my dad's. And I knew it wasn't Thanksgiving. And I knew it wouldn't have been like right before Thanksgiving because we spread out, our visits.
Right.
So I'm like, I think it was around this time that the wall came down. And I found one little plaque that mentioned November 9th, 1989. I think what the year was 89. And I was like, that's tomorrow. Like, we're one day from the anniversary,
Right.
which to me was just bizarre timing, especially the fact that I didn't know until I'm already looking at the wall. I'm already engaging with it. And then I'm like, it just so happens to be the anniversary. And then I never saw anything like anywhere around the city about like the anniversary or anything. It was just bizarre. So my mind is going back to my childhood when I'm sitting on the couch watching the news and it's saying this is a historic moment. And so I'm internalizing that and going, I'm going to remember this forever because I'm watching history. Like the news commentators were talking about how historical it was. So it kind of seared it into my memory. And so then I'm in 2025, I'm actually physically at the wall, but then my memory, my consciousness is also back in 89 as an 11-year-old. Then I'm subsequently reading Whitley's book, not in that exact instant, but that day, later that day, I'm reading his book. And his experiences, like his book is basically most of the time takes place in the mid 80s. And that's when he had his, like the major experience that he had all these missing parts that he ended up getting hypnotized with. And then through hypnosis was realizing that he was being abducted and This was before like the real kind of surge of star seeds, the way that now,
Mm-hmm.
if somebody's too young to kind of have memories from the 80s, it was a huge phenomenon. And from a pop culture perspective, there were,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of stories about ET abductions, and there were a lot of like movies and scary movies about it and things like that. But you didn't have a lot of like I don't think star seeds were really a thing where people kind of thought that they had connections. A lot of it was they were traumatic memories
Right.
where people were like, I was taken against my will, I was terrified, and so forth. It wasn't like, now I feel like well, not mostly, because there are so many people who have a whole spectrum of experiences. But a lot, I think we have turned a corner from a humanity perspective if we're just going to paint with a very, very broad brush
Right.
and say that a lot of people see and understand ET contact as a benevolent thing, something that is helping us.
Mm-hmm.
Again, not 100% of the time. I know there's still a lot of trauma for some people, but it's different now.
Right.
So back then, he's trying to cope and deal with this, and more memories are resurging through hypnosis. And so I'm from like the Kara Goodwin perspective,
Mm-hmm.
I'm in Berlin, this place that automatically connects me back to when I'm about 11, automatically connects me back to the 80s. Then I'm reading this book where he is like, this book is just, it takes me to the 80s. Like, I just
Mm-hmm.
feel like I'm in the 80s. Everything about it, was written, I think it was written in the 90s, but it's not a recent book. So there's
Right.
nothing from our time in
Right.
there. And in as he's writing it and he's undergoing his own hypnosis experiences, he spontaneously went back to when he was about 10 years old and hit another abduction experience that he had no idea. Like, he didn't have any inkling about this until it came up in his hypnosis session.
Right.
And then he was like, he could relate it to the memories that he did have that outside of hypnosis.
Mm-hmm.
So he's then in this book connecting back to that same time period that I was connecting to through his book and through being in Berlin of that like 10, 11-year-old sort of time.
Right.
Now, I don't have memories myself of ET contact, like as a child.
Right.
I have some of those mystical experiences that I was talking about before, the metaphysical. Those do feel very galactic. Um, I've had experiences where I can energetically feel that I am having work done, and that feels like it's a galactic. I don't get the insights about like, oh, this ET named, believer was, from this star system,
Mm-hmm.
was doing this specific thing. I just feel some sort of manipulation happening within my energy fields. I can feel vibrations happening. I feel presences, but I can't see it. And I don't know, I don't get the visual. I don't get the names. But those have happened more recently, the things that I can access in my memory. But all of this was kind of combining together in this experience. It seemed very deliberately set up
Mm-hmm.
to point to there being contact experiences when I was a child. And I've wondered if I remember being afraid a lot at night. I remember having trouble sleeping. I remember specifically being afraid that I was going to be abducted now by ETs. Now,
Right.
again, if you didn't live through that time, there just were a lot of abduction stories. It was a kind of a phenomenon that there were talk shows where people were coming on and telling their stories.
Mm-hmm.
It was in the zeitgeist at the time, and the stories were traumatic and scary. And the narrative was, there was no narrative that these are benevolent beings who are helping. It's
Right.
like they'll come in the night and they'll take you from your bed and you'll go up into a ship and they're going to do this probing and you're going to be horrified. Um, and that really scared me. So when I think back to, I'm like, I remember being afraid
Right.
that was going to happen, but I can logically make that connection of like, well, it was something that people were talking about and it
Mm-hmm.
was scary, just the same way as if I watched a horror movie when I was 8 and I was seeing people chopped up and, Jason like going around with a chainsaw, that would be on my mind for a few
Right.
days.
Right.
So like I say, I do have memories of being afraid. I don't have abduction memories, but the whole point of this communion book, what you see over and over again, and from what I know from beyond Whitley,
Mm-hmm.
is that a lot of us don't remember. That's part of
Mm-hmm.
it. And so it seemed to me that this whole experience, like everything that I've just been sharing about this, was ways for the universe to communicate to me that, yes, this idea or this wondering that I've had for a few years about, like, I wonder if I had some contact when I was young, that it was a verification and confirmation without the memories surfacing.
Right.
Just because there was so much synchronicity with it. And it was just like, wow, all these pieces do fit together. But then I still have the big pieces of the actual memories that aren't there yet.
Mm-hmm.
But again, like that's kind of a classic, that's a classic component of these experiences, is that, that you don't remember. They don't
Right.
allow you to remember. So.
Yep. And a lot of the times, uh, especially with myself, I remember a lot of my adult life, but the younger years, kind of like, okay, I must have, because I would talk to a lot of beings that normally people wouldn't see. So I must have, but there is no concrete. I think my human body says, nah, it's okay. You don't need to remember. You just take
Yeah.
it for granted. You know that in adult life you've had some. So why bother going there?
Yeah.
That kind of thing. And so to me, I've learned to just say, okay, well, I've had them, not necessarily remember every single step, but in those years, you're right. Everybody was scared you to death about their experiences, that your own mind said, no, that's okay. You don't need to remember. It's all right. We'll remember when we need to. So that's another way to show people that sometimes you get pieces, but you don't get all the pieces in for
Yeah.
that puzzle. So
Right.
now, like when you go to Akashic Records for a treatment or a session with someone, um, how does that come in with the other modalities that you practice?
In terms of like what types of insights do people give
Right,
me?
right.
Yeah. So I get the most common thing that I hear is the Andromedan connection. That comes up pretty much every time. Um, and that there is a praying mantis connection. I don't know. I don't think it's that I am like a praying mantis. I don't think I'm in that like lineage or whatever you want to think of, but there does seem to be that I have some assistance
Right.
with the praying mantis. Um, I get some, let's see, definitely Syrian, Pleiadian, and there is like an Orion Council um, component as
Mm-hmm.
well. And then things like the blue avians, actually, which isn't one that I hear about a lot,
Yeah.
but I've had dreams where I didn't even know that there were like what an avian being was, but I had a really profound, powerful dream with like, I think there were 3 of them, like tall, people, but they were birds. And so that was, and we were like in this kind of like round house type or
Mhm.
round room looking at something on a table. And that dream was so powerful. And I came out of it like, "Oh, that was weird. Like it felt so real, but like I didn't know what avian beings were. And then I had a galactic report done, and blue avian came in a couple of different times.
Mhm.
And that's been something that kind of comes up as, I had a guest on who channels a blue avian being and was like, yeah, you have a past life connection. It's rare. She's like, you don't see that very much, but um,
Mhm.
so that those types of things, I know that it's, I think for me, like I identify
Mhm.
with my Andromedan self, but I don't believe that I'm only that, and I don't believe that any of us are only that. It seems that we have different connections with different star systems, and it's funny because different things will come in and out of my um, awareness or my focus.
Mhm.
So for, even in terms of like being a star seed like that, I had a period of time where like that was getting a lot of attention in my life. Like I was trying to understand that. I wanted to know where I was from. And I was really like, kind of, when I would think about my soul history and my soul connection, that was a big identifier part for me.
Mhm.
And then more recently, um, like an ancient life here on earth has come into the forefront. And it came very synchronistically and kind of bit by bit. Like it's like I got a lot of insights all at once, but it also was happening. There were a lot of different components, similar to the story that I told about Berlin, but it was like
Mhm.
different people coming in and like unknowingly pointing me, like, oh, did you just say Crete? Um, and it was like all of this information about ancient Greece coming in, and there were dream components,
Right.
there were somatic components, there were synchronistic appoint components, there were meditation components, but it was very multi-layered. And that was an ancient earth life in Greece, on the island of Crete, and I was a priestess. And I'm sure that I'm. Do you know who Amanda Romania is? Is that
I've
name?
heard of her. Yes.
Okay, so for example, like I've had a few readings over the years with her. I love her so much, and I'm sure at least two of those readings she has talked about ancient Greece and
Mhm.
that there was a priestess life there. But it was kind of like, okay, like it was interesting, but I didn't have anything that really kind of connected me to it at the time. And now I'm like, oh my gosh, this is coming in so strongly. So, so now, it's just interesting how things cycle through and what gets your attention and what
Mhm.
like really feels relevant at the time. And with that particular experience that came through, there was a healing component of a relationship from a long time ago that was connected to that life. And I recognized through all of the whole time going through all of this, I was like, wow, I haven't thought about that relationship in a long time. And the earth Kara from 2025 thinks like, oh my God, that's so far in the past. I'm like, so over that, like it's ancient history.
Right.
But I realized like I just turned away from that relationship. Like it was done,
Right.
but I also was like, oh my God, like don't let the door hit you on the way out type of thing. And they were the same with me. It was
Right.
like good riddance.
Right.
So there was no like healing or completion that
Mhm.
happened. And so then when I was connecting with this ancient life, I was like, oh, had, like, this was a pattern that's shown up in both lives,
Mhm.
and we didn't complete. Like, we had an opportunity to kind of tie that out and to heal the energy
Mhm.
and really go our separate ways and be like, okay, this is done now, and we've kind of done what we've karmically, the opportunity that we were having in this life to complete the karma.
Right.
And so I was energetically then working on that over a period of time. And there was no part of me that felt that I needed to engage with this person on
Mhm.
the physical realm, or, here, like, to dig up their contact info and somehow get in touch with them and have a conversation. And there was no part of me that had any desire or felt that that was necessary
Mhm.
to close things out. Because once you learn how to work with energy,
Mm.
and there are a lot of different ways that we can learn how to do that. For some people, they might do that with sound. For some people, they might do that with some kind of symbols, or they might speak light
Mm.
language to it, or there are a lot of different ways that people express.
Right.
For me, sacred geometry is a huge, huge component of how I work and who I am, really. And that's when I have those mystical, metaphysical experiences, there's almost always like a geometrical, that's always a part of it, where I'm seeing patterns and I'm seeing like shapes and they're moving. And um, so for me to work on that energy and to help heal that energy, it was using just within myself
Mhm.
geometry and tuning into the how it was all kind of messy and not coherent. There was no real harmony with it. It was all just kind of like messy, just like tangled. And so it was working with that and letting it be harmonic and letting it be coherent and seeing it that way, seeing it kind of get into like some symmetry
Mhm.
and some healing and some coherence, and then working with that, and then using a lot of intention as well. And so that's kind of the I guess I started that by talking about how things kind of come in and out of our awareness, and I
Mhm.
trust what does come up in the awareness in terms of the timing, and I pay attention to the synchronicities and like, oh, okay, I'm getting this kind of theme that's
Mhm.
showing up from a lot of different people and places and things that I'm hearing and seeing. So what is this trying to point me to?
Right.
And then seeing if there is something that can be done beyond that, beyond just like, oh, that's cool. Oh, that's a coincidence. Oh, that's whatever. Of like, okay, there's something here that maybe I can heal, maybe I can and help to kind of clear out or whatever. So
Right. And by you doing that, even energetically, right? Um, you set the intention. You really don't want to go through it again. Thanks. Peace.
yeah.
And we did our job, even if it took a little bit of time to one of us at least to realize, because you never know, maybe he was doing healing on the situation and that's why it came into your focus.
It could be. Yeah, I'd be
And
very surprised. But
I never know. I
you
mean,
never know.
we do
But
have awakenings, right? We do
yeah,
have
yeah. Right.
realize that we're on the wrong path. And a lot of us do try to go back to the correct one. Some not so much, but
Yeah.
we if we get the information, most humans try to go back to if it's pointed out to them.
Right.
Uh, so, um, so your book, right? Tell us a little more about it and where could they find it? Even though
Yeah.
it's going to be in the description, but
Yeah. Yeah. So it is called Your Authentic Awakening: A Guide to Everyday Spiritual Living. So it really is kind of as support. It's like a guidebook kind of for awakening, and it doesn't need, you don't have to be early on your path. I do start it with some laying the foundation of, some people will use the word soul, for example, and they mean one thing, and some people might use higher self, and they mean something else, and you might hear like, oh, well, what's the difference between vibration and frequency, and um, things like that. So I spend the beginning just kind of laying those foundations of when I use these words, this is what I mean, because things get muddled.
Mm-hmm.
And then just talking about like, why is it important to connect to our higher self, to open ourselves to the spiritual dimension of our experience? Why are so many people not connected? What is it how do we get disconnected? And why should we care? What happens when we're not disconnected? What happens when we get connected? How can we overcome some of these things? And then getting into some of the more specific things to do with our spiritual awakening and our spiritual experience, in terms of like the role of the heart, and again, some of the mystical, metaphysical things, like the ways that I've seen time. There are different ways that I have engaged with time. I think it was chapter 9. I actually go into an experience that I had with a cult. So that was kind of a cringe and sort of humorous, like, experience, or, I tried to write it kind of lightly in terms of how you find yourself in that situation, because you don't know. This is the tricky thing. This is why I thought it was important to put that in there, because I never thought that I would experience a cult. And luckily I wasn't in it very long. A lot of people who'd been there longer than me started waking up to what was going on. And then luckily they shared it with me. Like, wait, things aren't adding up here. This is what I'm experiencing. This is what other people are doing. I'm out of here. And I was like, oh, I'm coming too. Wait for me. I'm out of here. But through that experience, I learned so much, and I can now more readily see the red flags, and hopefully people can learn because the unfortunate thing is that when you join a spiritual organization, they don't classify themselves as cult or non-cult. So you kind of have to just keep your eyes open and keep your intuition. And I talk about in that too, about the red flags that I was like, don't love this. Don't feel aligned about this. This doesn't feel right. But I kept kind of going and being like, yeah, but there are other things that feel so great. And so in hindsight, it's like, oh, I had those. I saw these things, and I kept going anyway. So I talk some about that, and it's, yeah, and so in answer to your question about where, you can get that on Amazon, on Barnes and Noble. It's on Audible. You can find more information about it on my website, which is karagoodwin.com. And yeah, it's out there.
Now, I always ask this question, or unless the guest already answers it, but how does your family feel about what you do? Because, there are some families that are, yeah, okay, you do your thing, I'll remain over here, or are they into it, or,
I would say I'm the black sheep. I don't know, my family is not. Yeah. I am I'm the black sheep. But they're supportive. So like my husband, for example, I've been married for 21 years, and he's not into this, but he is supportive. He doesn't make fun of me, which I know that is a problem. Like I think that we would not have been married for 21 years if I felt like, he was mocking me because I do have alternative beliefs and experiences, and but so he's not into it, but we have a hot tub, and he'll like we will be looking for UFOs, and
Right.
he'll look right along with me and be like, "Oh, look at that light," and um, so he's curious,
Mm-hmm.
but he's not like I was trying to talk to him about the Boogosphere, and he was, and I was telling him, it was, I think it's in Colombia, right? The Boogosphere. And he was like, "Do you mean Bogota?" Like he was getting like caught up on the Booga part. And he's like, "You
Right.
mean Bogota?" And I'm like, "Shh, I'm trying to tell you about it. Stop mansplaining to me what I'm trying to tell you." But anyway, so it was and that's a hard thing to explain anyway. And
Right.
it was enough out there of like, this is a physical thing that they
Mm-hmm.
have found, and there are all these weird things happening with it, and people are trying to take it. And um, he couldn't quite, you could see it's not that he didn't believe me, but he was also like, nah. So he's not like, okay, everything that I'm interested, he's going to be interested in.
Right.
A lot of times it's a hard sell for him.
Uh-huh.
Sorry.
Okay.
And then I have kids and, teenagers, and they tolerate, but they're definitely, they want to be normal.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to be normal when I was a teenager.
Right.
And so they're not really like, they're not there. And I can understand,
Mm-hmm.
it's out there. I'm out there,
Mm-hmm.
and I wouldn't have wanted to be out there like this as a teenager, I'm sure. So, and then with my more extended family, they're I would say they're tolerant, again, like they're not making fun of me, but they're not, yeah. I mean, they're not like really
Super.
interested in this stuff.
Right. Right. Well,
Yeah.
it's like the UFOs or whatever, ETs. And in the very beginning, when all this started, anybody that would share was shunned, basically.
Right.
So, and slowly we have gotten to a place where, yes, I also had experiences. People are more willing to share, support each other. And so it gets there. It's just, in, you know, it takes a little bit because we've been so programmed
100%.
to think we're it. We're the
Hmm.
smartest things. We're the most advanced things in the whole universe. And I'm like, are you kidding me?
Right.
You know, how can you really think that Earth is the only one that has beings, first of all?
Right.
Never mind, a place where you could actually live or right? Just intelligence. Come on. Sometimes we can't get out of our own way. We're not even smart enough to get out of our own way. And yet, you see in ancient Bibles where you have the UFOs drawings right there, you have alien drawings, the Vatican has the whole section tucked away somewhere that nobody could see, where in the ancient writings, in the original places where people were writing books and people were uh, just taking accounts and writing them down so they wouldn't be forgotten. There's a lot of things that are not explained, but
Yeah.
you know,
But it's suppressed, and
right?
and like you say, people have been ridiculed for it. So
Mm-hmm.
it's, we just kind of have to decide whose life it is that we're living,
Mm-hmm.
and who it is that we're trying to please. And that's something I think that is a big thing for a lot of people to overcome,
Mm-hmm.
and myself included, of just recognizing like, okay, this is my life.
Mm-hmm.
This is what feels true to me. These are my experiences, and this is what I'm interested in. And so, yeah, I could talk myself out of it all day
Mm-hmm.
long, because I don't want to be misunderstood and I want to fit in and all
Mhm.
of this, I think about the neighborhood where I live, and it's a lot of like kind of bougie young people. And I'm again, like people are pretty nice
Right.
in my world. So they don't like make fun of me. Well, maybe they do behind my back. Maybe they, but I don't think they even know. You know what I mean? Like I'm sure somebody's come across my content,
Right.
um, but they invite me around and but they're not, this kind of stuff isn't on their radar and nobody's talking about it. And I wouldn't really be comfortable talking about it with everybody. So
Right.
I don't know, in certain settings, right?
Right. Right.
It's,
Mhm. Yes.
yeah,
And thank God we're out of that time where you said anything that wasn't normal, you got put away.
yeah,
So because we would all be in trouble. Uh, there's a big percentage of the population that would be in trouble.
yeah,
But, you know, uh, but like you said, it is time. It is time. They started in the 80s. They were willing to talk about it in the 40s, 50s, 60s, but very specific little incidents that they couldn't hide away right away.
yeah,
Um, like Roswell, et cetera, et cetera. So they had to follow that. I mean, those were big. You can't just say, no, nobody saw anything crash. Nobody saw this. Nobody, they still try, but it's, it's like, yeah, no, which
yeah,
is not, we saw it.
right.
So, um, is there anything else that you want to share that we haven't?
I think we've covered a lot.
Mm.
I don't know how this has only been an hour. Like we went into so many different topics, but yeah, this has been so much fun, and I'm really grateful to connect with your listeners. And I think that I'm sure there are a lot of people who also feel like they're the black sheep and that there's this part of themselves that's emerging that they're nurturing. And I would just say to trust that and be patient with
Mm.
yourself and with other people, because if you're not seeing reflections of some of the things that you're feeling and that are coming to the surface for you in your outer world, it can kind of make you feel lonely or second guess what's
Mhm.
happening. But I think a common theme of what we've been talking about, Glenda, is this trust in the timing of how
Mhm.
things are unfolding. So if the time has come and you have been experiencing things like this, or your reality feels a lot different from a lot of the people that you engage with in your world, still trust that and trust the timing,
Mhm.
and know that it all comes in its own time. So their timing is different than yours.
Mhm.
It doesn't mean that you're off track because you're not seeing more people following in behind you.
Right, right. It's just you got to wait for the synchronicities to help each other, basically.
Yeah, yeah.
So, well, thank you, Kara, and thank you to our audience. It's been
Thank you.
great, and as always, please do share, please subscribe, please follow our guests, and love you. Bye.
Thank you, Glenda.